Welcome back. Where the crimes happened, no one knows. But over a period of 4 decades, Channel 3 reporters have been on the scene off a certain stretch of road in our state that's earned the nickname the dumping grounds because of the number of bodies left there.
Somebody has to know something. She didn't want to be this cold case that just sat there.
A case sitting there in unfortunately chilly company.
I just think it's been cold for so long that, I think everybody has given up hope.
So yes, so from the outside looking in, I look like I am okay.
There are 7 families whose loved ones ended up along the Route 8 corridor from Waterbury to Harwington, a deserted stretch that's become a breeding ground for cold cases.
Channel 3 Waterbury Bureau Chief Audrey Russo explores these cases in an Eyewitness News special report. It's called The Dumping Grounds. It airs tomorrow night at 7:30 on our sister station, The Wax. It's also on WFSB Plus if you want to watch it right now. Audrey Russo joins me in studio. I did just watch it. Great. I mean, unbelievable stuff that you got about these old cases. So congratulations to you on putting together an unbelievable special. But
thank you.
Tell me about this story. How did it first come to your attention?
Yeah, so it came to my attention in February of 2021. We got an update from state police saying that they had identified some remains that were found up in Harwington. And, it was just a quick one-sheet press release. I think we ran it as a quick just anchor read in one of our newscasts, and it's a technical term. And I wondered what happened, who was this girl? She had ties to so many communities. State police at the time were looking for more information about it, and I reached out, tried to find some family members on social media, and I contacted Carol, who you heard, and I interviewed her right then and there saying, what's your reaction to this? How upsetting. Of course, this is devastating for her living so far away. She lives in Texas, but knowing that her niece was found. And then I just stayed in contact with her after that. And a year went by, and a little over a year went by, and there didn't seem to be any new updates in the case. And I was interviewing her a second time, and she said, I don't want her to be this cold case that was found like all the other cold cases in that area, which prompted me to look a little bit more into it and realize that there were so many cases connected to this one stretch of road.
So we're talking about Route 8 from Waterbury to Harwington, 7 victims from the 80s to right up basically to present time. And police, are they looking at them all as possibly connected? Because you have such great description of what happens in this story. Going back to old WFSB video, I mean, our viewers who have been watching for a long time will recognize a lot of these old reporters who were there. Are there similarities?
There were similarities in a lot of the cases, especially the early ones that happened almost in like a cluster of years, like 86, 88, a couple months later, 89, 92, 94, where a lot of these cases, unfortunately, seem to have sexual motivations. And that prompted state police to really look into whether or not those cases were connected. In some cases, there were 2 women whose remains were found in almost the exact same spot in Harwington. So that's sort of what prompted, I guess, a little bit more of an organized look into that area. But then a couple other cases happened. There was one in 2006, and then the one in 2021. Police didn't really think that those ones were, committed by the same person, but it did prompt more, looking into that area and wondering why this area is so troublesome.
Well, and you talk about it in your piece, and we're looking at some of the old video from our reporters that they shot back in the 80s. But you talk about in the piece, it's a dark, somewhat desolate stretch of Route 8, maybe an easy spot where if you had to dump a body, you could. But there are some weird things, like a couple of the bodies have body parts removed, some things that this isn't just, this is an easy spot to push a body out of a car. I mean, there is some, I know the police even looked at Jeffrey Dahmer at one point.
Yeah, and there was evidence that in almost every case that the body was killed elsewhere, the person was killed elsewhere, and the body was dumped some amount of time later. I didn't have time to get into it in the special, but the first victim, a male victim, police actually found that he had his legs cut off with surgical precision, which, is something that takes unfortunate amounts of forethought and planning. So just knowing that this is not only a desolate stretch north of Waterbury, which is a pretty populous city, but knowing that people had this in their head as a place that they could dump a body after doing something horrible. How many hours ahead of time?
I told you, as someone who grew up in Connecticut, hearing some of those old reporters that I used to listen to was so interesting to me, but also interesting were the families that you talked to. And some of them, certainly the family you talked to towards the end of the special, is quite upset with what they've gotten from state police about their loved one. And I know in many cases the victims had troubled histories. They may have been prostitutes or drug users or addicts of some kind. Of course, that doesn't minimize their killing. And do some of the families feel like maybe it did in the eyes of police?
Yeah, they felt like it did in the eyes of police and in the eyes of the public, feeling like the messaging that was put out at the time, obviously attitudes towards sex workers have changed, but some of the messaging that was put out and received by the public wasn't positive and maybe didn't inspire a lot of folks to really question, you know, was I driving by at this time? Did I see this person? Just sort of an attitude of like, well, I don't consort with, you know, this type of person, and sure, I would never see that. So there was a lot of, you know, upset at the onset of how they were, at the onset of the investigation, how they were portrayed. And then you take that maybe lack of interest at the start and then multiply, you know, years passing the case on from detective to detective. That lack of interest almost grows exponentially the more the years go on. And so you just have these families who remember their loved one, remember them as a whole person, and feeling like, you know, from the start you didn't view him or her that way, and who's going to want to take up the cause now?
And in some cases, because detectives have retired and it is a cold case, dozens of detectives. You talked to a retired detective in your piece who was so interesting to listen to. It certainly is, you know, I can see where families would be upset. We only have about a minute left. What do you think? I hope people will go watch your piece. Like I said, it's wonderful, but what do you think is next?
Well, right now, the state police are they're still looking through and trying to actively pursue leads in the most recent case, the Brianna Beam case. And so they say that they haven't looked through everything there. They're still trying to find out more information about what happened to her, you know, what brought her from living in Waterbury, Thompson, Bristol to where she unfortunately was found dead. But the other cases, they say they are still looking to accept information, people who may be remembering things. If somebody watches this piece and is reminded of something that maybe they saw back then, they're inviting anybody and everybody to reach out to the cold case tip line, because, you know, they say they're never going to stop investigating.
Well, listen, I told you I watched it. I'm going to congratulate you now for the awards you're going to win on it, because it's really great. And if you watch this, you have to understand, she shot it, she edited it, she found the old videos, and she came up with this idea. Outrageously good work, and I hope people go watch it. It's on the Wax. It's on tomorrow night, 7:30 on the Wax. If you want to check it out, WFSB Plus, other places, I think, in our YouTube page and other places as well. Audrey Russo, thank you for being with us, and hopefully we'll have you back when there's a next chapter.
Thank you so much.